Hello everyone, welcome on my channel. So today I have the great pleasure to be live with Mr. Andy Timmons. Hi Andy, nice to meet you.
Hey, Alex, how you doing, man? Good to see
How are you
you.
doing?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
great pleasure to have you here on my channel. Thanks for accepting the request. Thanks
Sure,
to your manager, Steve. Just chatting a bit about guitar and your upcoming
sure,
album. We will talk about that later.
sure.
So just to start the interview, for those who didn't know you, you're Andy Timmons. You're a well-known guitarist who played in so many bands as Taylor Bay, Danger, Pound Kings, and of
Yeah,
course your own band, Andy Timmons Band.
yeah,
Besides that, you released 7 solo albums. I guess Electric Truth will be the 8th one, I guess.
yeah. I have never, I haven't kept count. That sounds a little low, but there's little bits of stuff everywhere. I don't know how many, but lots of records out, and
And you worked also as a session guitarist for other band, as you
yeah,
said. You also
sure.
toured with famous bands such as Kiss and Alice Cooper.
Well,
Remember
that's
that?
it, from the Danger days. We opened for those bands.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so back in the day, so that would have been late '80s, early '90s, and yeah, kind of childhood fantasy stuff. Because Kiss was the first band I ever saw live in concert in 1976. I was 13 years old,
Oh,
and saw
okay.
Kiss on the Destroyer tour. So
Oh,
there I was 14 years later with Danger opening for. It's my first heroes after the Beatles, of course, the Beatles, and then Kiss. That was certainly a great time. And then with Alice Cooper as well, I was a big fan of
and
big
what
fan of
was
his. And
your feeling when you were just opening the concert? How it was?
oh, I was like a little kid, and so professionally, it's like we were excited because we were getting in front of the largest audiences we'd been, playing in front of. So we obviously were there to be as professional as we can be and promote ourselves. But then after we played, Bruno and I every night would be on the side of the stage watching Kiss like we were teenagers. Just we went from, okay, we're the guy on stage, we're trying to be the rock stars, right? But then we'd turn instantly into fans, and just so it was a kind of a really special time for all of us in that band because we all grew up with '70s rock. It was all Kiss and Cheap Trick and all that. So
Good
yeah,
memories.
really a fun time in my life. Very fond memories.
Just before talking about your career and this album, just we'll talk about guitar and how was your first contact with this instrument and with guitar and
Yeah.
music in general. So you talked about 13 when you was 13, right?
Yeah. Well, that's the first concert I saw, but I was already playing in my first band by the age of 13. I started toying around with toy guitars when I was 4 and 5 years old. I had little plastic guitars, with nylon strings on them. But I had 3 older brothers that all played a little bit of guitar. They had like just very budget acoustic guitars in the house, and that might have had 6 strings, might have had 5 strings. But I would watch them play just basic, just acoustic-y, simple chords. So I try to teach myself what I saw them doing when they weren't around. I wasn't really allowed to touch the instruments, but would sneak in their rooms when they weren't around. And it kind of led from that. But the fact that each of my older brothers were voracious record buyers. So I was in 1963 when I was born. My oldest brother was 12. So all the pop and rock music that came out in the 60s, they were buying the records and the 45s and the 33 RPMs. So lots of British Invasion, lots of Beatles and Kinks and Yardbirds and Herman's Hermits and Animals, and Dave Clark 5 was another great favorite. So I grew up with guitar-driven rock and roll in my house, and the guitars were there. So from my earliest memories that I was attracted to the guitar. I didn't realize it was going to be my life, but looking back on it, it was pretty clear was my passion, from a very early age. So by the age of 13, I was in 8th grade maybe, and so I had my first band. And I was with that same drummer for about 7 years till I ended up leaving Evansville, Indiana, where I grew up, to go to college in Miami. But so I was always in a band with older guys at 13. That's not not very old, but I was already playing well enough to do gigs. And so then I was always in a band. And so I was learning guitar on my own, just in my bedroom, playing along with my Kiss records and whatever it was. But was in a band with older guys that had a little bit of experience and were better players to a degree. And so I was very fortunate that I had that ability to be in a band, to have the passion for the guitar, to keep learning. And by the age of 16, that's when I sought out a local guitar teacher named Ron Pritchett, who you know, even at 16, I was playing professionally. I was a very good rock and roll guitar player, but he started teaching me, you know, how to read music and started playing and you know, exposed me to jazz music. He was a big Barney Kessel and Joe Pass fan. So he started kind of teaching me about jazz harmony and jazz voicings and playing the music for me. So it really started to broaden my ear, and anything with a guitar in it, I loved. You know, it didn't matter if it was classical or blues or country or rock and roll or whatever it was. If that guitar was in there, I wanted to know how to do it. I said, man, I love that sound. You know, acoustic, nylon, electric. You know, obviously I'm more of a rock guy, but I loved it all, and still to this day, it still, you know, it still inspires me to hear great music being played on a guitar. You know, it's just still our passion, right?
You learn classical guitar. You talked about jazz education too, if I understand well. That's it.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah. Well, my first 2 years of college, so I was in Evansville, Indiana. I was playing, you know, 3 and 4 nights a week in my rock cover band. That was also turning into an original act, but I was taking jazz lessons. But the local university where I grew up offered a classical guitar program. So to make mom happy to stay in school after I graduated high school, you know, I auditioned to get into the classical guitar department on an electric guitar because I didn't have a nylon string guitar. But I somehow got in. My dad was able to buy me a very cheap nylon string classical guitar, and so for 2 years I studied classical. And even though I knew nothing about it going in, you know, in advance of that, I started just going to the public library and checking out, you know, Segovia and Julian Bream and John Williams records, just to get the sound in my ear and to understand a little bit about the music. And I had a wonderful teacher named Renato Buturi, who was from Milan, Italy, and he had a little bit of jazz experience. So he could tell that, well, I'm mainly an electric guitar player, but he gave me as much as he could. And I can't claim to be a decent classical guitarist, but being exposed to the repertoire and doing the SOAR studies and all that, it helped me a lot and definitely broadened. Again, I was getting all the rock and I had jazz stuff, but to get some of the classical world, which I had zero knowledge and experience with, was a really, you know, a maturing thing for me, and to help broaden my ear, you know.
This classical jazz education is the source of your good melodies in your records.
Well, to me it's all music. You know, in school it's like, yes, you're studying classical, or in Miami, yes, you're studying jazz. But I was never an elitist. You know, I grew up with a foundation of Beatles, and there's obviously a lot of melody there, right? Yeah. My study of jazz and what that, I think when I look back on it, and how it kind of really helped shape how I think melodically, because you're having to navigate chord changes, right? And it really becomes important about voice leading. Whereas in rock and roll, we tend to we're in the key of A, go for it. You know, it's like kind of shred away in scales and that type of thing. But in the jazz world, you know, you can get away with scalar thinking, but it becomes much more important to be able to voice lead through the chord changes, to really have the sound of that harmony, you know, in your melodic choice. And it's all about tension and release. Is it a chord tone? Is it a non-chord tone? If it's not a chord tone, where does that note want to go? But that's very much in classical music too. You know, it's all about, you know, 5/1. It's all about that tension and release. And so I think from the study and I can call it study, but I can call it just enjoyment. It's just listening to things and finding things that you resonate with and make you feel something. And it might come for me from Chopin. It might come from Elvis Costello. It might come from John Lennon. It might come from Pat Metheny. It's all the same to me, because it's a melodic musical feeling. And so I take all that in, and then when I'm writing, I'm aspiring to all that. Whatever it is that I've taken in that I love so much, you know, I'm trying to write something that rises to that level. I may never get there, but I think that each you know, writer or improviser, because I love the Bill Evans quote, the great jazz piano player. He's being interviewed by his brother Harry. You know, he talks about, you know, when you're playing a solo, when you're improvising a solo, that's a minute's music in a minute's time, because you're improvising on the spot. But that same compositional ear of the improviser is really the same as the composer, but that minute's music might take a year to really finely craft But when you're soloing, it's happening in the moment. But it's the same instinct. It's the same. I have a course called Melodic Muse that I did for TrueFire, and I call it the R-elect. And I had to kind of coin that phrase because a term didn't exist that I was aware of. I consider it the intellect of the mind, or the intellect of the intellect of the ear. Intellect is the intellect of the mind, of course. You can analyze and study. Well, if I play this note E while that C chord is sounding, that's the third that'll have a very sweet sound. But the R-elect is, well, if I play an F over that E chord, I know I can intellectually think of, well, it's going to resolve to E if I want to release that tension. But the R-elect is the ear kind of guiding you without the thought. It's just kind of this natural direction that if I hear a note and there's a particular chord happening, I'll have a direction I want to go. And that's all influenced by everything that I've taken in throughout my life. That kind of melodic inspiration, harmonic inspiration, the artist delivering that melody, how it's being presented, how it's being played, all that factors into if I'm improvising or composing. It's all kind of coming from that same space that I call the R-elect, And the more time we spend on the instrument, the more natural that can be. But it takes a long time, sometimes a lifetime, to get to that place where, I'm just now feeling like I'm just scratching the surface, like I'm beginning to get somewhere. And I think I'll always feel that way. I don't think we ever feel like we arrive. Oh, okay, I'm there. I'm really great. It's like, okay, I'm making progress, but I want to go so much further. But that's the beauty of guitar playing. That's the beauty of music. It's the beauty of life. If you remain open to learning, that seems to be, for me, the secret to happiness. It's kind of a trite saying, but it's not the destination, it's the journey. If you can learn to recognize that and realize, okay, I'll never be Allan Holdsworth or Sean Lane or whoever the brilliant musicians are, but if I can just continue to improve myself, that's the key to happiness right there, I think.
Okay, I understand.
I covered a lot of ground there. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's perfect.
That's what I get for having a coffee with an interview, right? I'll get a little chatty.
It's perfect, Andy. So so if I just summarize, it's a lot of ear training here, listening song and practice on the guitar, you would say.
Well, that's that very general way to put it, but I mean, it's we have to be careful not to learn too much with our eyes.
Yeah. Okay.
Meaning we all have, I love transcriptions and I'll watch YouTube all day long, because now we can watch all our favorite players showing you, here's how I played that lick, But, growing up, because I'm an older guy, we didn't have all that. And I had my record player in my ears and my guitar. And so I call that earning it. You're kind of earning it in a different way by really absorbing it through the ear. You make those connections that help you get to the level where you're expressing your own self, probably more quickly than if you're getting everything from a written page or being kind of shown things. Now, all those things are helpful. And again, I use all those too, but I know that something will stick with me deeper and a lot longer if I pick it out by ear first. If I work with Simon Phillips, a great drummer for years, and he's a great writer, and he would always have very thorough charts. He would sequence all the parts in the computer, and here's the chart, here's the notes, And if I learned it first from the page, I was really reliant on the page for a lot longer. Whereas if I just don't look at that, just learn it by ear first as much as I can, even though some of the phrases might be difficult or the chords are a lot of stacked fourths and fifths, and nothing has a third in Simon's music. So some of those things I would refer to the chart for help, but I would memorize it so much quicker if I just did it by myself on my own and then got the help where I needed to, and that goes for everything. That's just for me, a better way for, the musical mind and the musical ear to learn things. So full disclosure for me, even when I was in school, there was exercises and assignments where we had to write everything down. And my friend and hero, Mike Stern, he writes he's great at transcribing. He writes everything. He's got a stack but I'm lazy and my calligraphy is so bad I wouldn't be able to read it anyway. So I tend not to write things down, which is something I should do. I'm not saying don't write anything down, but the word transcribing can sound like work. And I recognize, again, this is just for me personally, over the course of my playing career and still to this day, I don't want to feel like it's work. I'm doing it because I love it. And when it starts to feel like work, now for some, that's part of a loving process. I think Steve Vai was a great transcriptionist, and he would write out all these things. And I really do admire people that have that tenacity and that part of their brain that functions and enjoys it. But I'm just not that guy. So I tend to my transcribing is more learning, physically, just orally learning the things, and then it's just a matter of trying to remember it. And if I forget it, I can't refer to the page. I'll just go back and listen again, because at the end of the day, I'm trying to get that part of the musical ear to really have it and not just rely on my eyes.
Okay, so you were talking about Steve Vai. I want just to talk about the Steve Vai Just at Triani, because you were guests on their G3 tours. Can you just talk about that and how it was to play with your heroes? Because I saw that they were your heroes when you were younger. So
they kind of feel like older brothers now. But I mean, I absolutely. When I was in Danger, I was in, a commercial rock band, but I was really wanting to head where Joe and Steve already were. When Satriani released Surfing with the Alien, and here was this incredibly gifted and virtuoso guitar player, but they were cool songs. It's like, wow, that's everything. We're getting this melody. We're getting great solos, It's like the surf music of the 60s, when you had the Dick Dale and some of these guys. Yeah, we don't need a singer. Let's just play that guitar, So that was so inspiring. I remember having that in on a cassette player Walkman and walking around and hearing Joe's playing. And then, of course, Steve, I knew from the Attitude song was kind of a big thing when that came out, and his Flexible record, and, of course, the David Lee Roth stuff he was doing. So, then by the early 90s, I became an Ibanez endorsee. When I was still in Danger, about 1991, I became an Ibanez endorsee. And of course, Joe and Steve were, and still to this day, the big stars of the Ibanez roster. But through that association, we started doing gigs occasionally. Like there was a big NAMM show concert that happened in 1993. I was working with Simon. In fact, the first gig I did with Simon Phillips was being the house band for all the Ibanez big stars. There was Satriani and Vai and Paul Gilbert. Sean Lane was there that night. Alex Skolnick and Reb Beach. And we all played, and so that was the first night I kind of got to share the stage with some of these great guitar players. And from then, they all knew me and I guess respected me and were always very helpful, in the press, saying nice things. And then when G3 started happening, whenever that was, was it later 90s or 97? Anytime they were in the Dallas area, they would always invite me to come out and sit in and play, which was an honor. These guys... top of the heap for guitar virtuoso rock guitar, right? So for them to consider me somebody that they like to have on stage with them, I'm very honored. And there's great videos that are out there in various contexts. Either me and Steve, even me and Satriani jamming House of Bullets somewhere. Then not long ago, Steve Vai came through town, and he didn't have the ability to invite me on stage that night, but he said, "Yeah, come to the show, and I'll see you after the gig." But then he's strolling out in the audience on his last song, and he sees me in the audience. He didn't know where I was sitting, and he hands me his guitar, just, "Hey, wow, there's Andy." So you look up Steve Vai, hands Andy Timmons his guitar. There's a really sweet clip, but it was truly a moment where, a lot of times we've played together. This night wasn't going to work out. But as he's strolling through the crowd with his wireless, he sees me, and just his first thought was to just hand me his guitar. It was the sweetest thing. And anyway, so a lot of fond memories with those guys. And of course, I worked with Steve Vai on the Favored Nations label for quite a while. I was signed to his label. So they've both been very encouraging and very supportive, and I'm glad to call them friends, but they're still heroes too, I love them to death.
You're endorsed artist at Ibanez. Can you just tell us a little more about this endorsement? What was your first guitar on Ibanez? I don't think so, because you told me that it was a cheap one, but...
I had a series of mini guitars, whatever I could afford. My first one was $12.95, a no-name, very thin, solid body guitar. So yeah, it was when I started working with Ibanez, it was still I was in the middle of the Danger years, so I was in a good position. I'd been a Kramer endorsee first, and oddly, Kramer at one point with Eddie Van Halen and Richie Sambora, they were like the great guitar company. Then they oddly went out of business in 1990, 91. So I had to find a company to work with, and I was in a pretty good position because I was in a band that was on MTV, which was a big thing back in the day, to have your video circulating. So most guitar companies want to work with you. So I really tried to find a company that I thought was more suited, not for specifically Danger, but where I thought my career was heading. And of course, seeing, Satriani and Bai on Ibanez and my friend, I had my friend Reb Beach. And I had met the Ibanez artist relations guy, and so he was like, "Yeah, we don't like your band, but we love your playing, and we'll see what I can do." So they brought me on, and at that point, it was kind of a process of like, we want to build you your ultimate guitar. What is that? And I really didn't know what to tell him, because I really had grown up. I played Les Paul type guitars, and then I had a Squier Strat that I liked, an '83 Squier Strat that I had EMG pickups in. So we just went through a variety. They started sending me guitars to try out. They had the USA Customs and the RGs, and everything was pretty cool, but I still hadn't found what I was looking for. But Kramer had put together a parts Strat for me that was basically either a Warmoth or a Chandler neck or Schecter neck, some kind of just no name, but unfinished maple neck. And I went, man, this is my favorite neck. So I sent them that neck, and I just said, just build me a guitar that looks like Eric Johnson's old Strat, the 54. So basically, this is the prototype they built for me in 1994. So it took about 2 or 3 years of just trying different things. But once they built this guitar, that's when I felt I had my home, And clearly it worked out, because here we are, how many years is that? That's, 20 plus years, 27, 28 years of playing this as my main guitar. There's been versions of this guitar. There's the new AZ version of it, and they're all great guitars. I'm so honored that they work with me on these things. But this is still my number one. Just, it's got a lot of miles on it, you know what I mean? So very, very proud of it, and proud of all the guitars they've released. Every time I pick up one of the guitars in the shops, it's exactly what I'm playing. I love it. It's a good relationship. Yeah.
Okay. Just to move on the other part of the interview is to talk about your upcoming album, which is called Electric Truth. The name Electric Truth was interesting for me. I wanted to know why this name. And you said in the press release that in a world of such misinformation and deceit, I found music and playing music more important now than ever than before. So do you want to say that Electric Truth is your truth to the world?
Yeah, that what you said is essentially the idea. Music is beyond where we are now in the world of, like I said, misinformation and disinformation. It's always been a solace and safe place for me. I was always a shy kid growing up, and my parents divorced early on, and so I was alone a lot. So music was always just, it was my comfort zone, right? And I just was always listening, always playing. And so it's always been kind of a centering thing in my life, regardless of what's going on emotionally, or things are good, things are bad. Music's always there for me as something I can trust, whatever it might be, whatever the source is, if I'm playing it or if it's just music I'm listening to. But yeah, over the past, 5-6 years, things have just kind of spiraled in a crazy way, just depending on how you look at the world stage politics. And I will never be political online, or I certainly have my views, but it's just that not many people seem to really know what to believe anymore. There's a lot of distrust, and it's sad. It really is, because it's just, I think at the end of the day, one-on-one with any human being, I'm going to find a way to let that person know that I respect them and I love them, no matter who they are, or what they believe. I know that if we extract all the noise of all the outrage machines that seem to be coming at us all day long, everybody's trying to get everybody so outraged. But if I'm one-on-one with a human being, I'm going to find compassion. I'm going to find love. I'm going to find common ground somehow. And that's how I treat, I've always been that way my whole life. That's how I treat other human beings, with respect, with kindness, always. And I just want to keep finding that. And if I can, if there's too much noise, I know I've got music, right? If you see the album cover, you'll see there's a lot of blur behind me. There's a lot of noise. There's all these people. And that was kind of the idea, is like, I'm going to, I have to pay attention to a degree, but I want it to be blurry. I don't want it to affect me too deeply, though that's difficult to achieve, right? That's like, but music is a type of meditation, I suppose I'm getting at. I've always tried to meditate, but I'm not good enough to quiet my mind down. But I can play. I can play my music. I can put a record on that I love, or I can pick up my guitar and I can make all that go away for a while. And I think that's the importance of any art. It's to take a break, to go somewhere else if you need to, or to help accentuate what is your reality. Some people need a place to cry. Some people need a place to help them, feel energy and happiness, and music has always provided that for me and for everybody if they allow it. And so if I can participate in that in some way and put music out there that maybe helps people, be a bit happier, be sad if they need to, let it out. It can be very cathartic. I love music that makes me cry, that makes me emotional. I love music that lifts me up and makes me feel energetic and happy. So it's nice that we have all that can really add to our lives and sometimes save us. Music, I can't imagine my life without it. Right?
That's very touching. That's very touching.
Yeah, but I say this in so many interviews, but I'll be redundant, that you and I and everybody watching this channel, we're so fortunate to have this. The reason you clicked on this is that you're a guitar fan, I'm guessing. And not everybody has that kind of passion in their life, that we have this. It's a hobby. For me, it's a profession, but it's also, this great centering love that we have, and we can geek out and talk about strings and picks and amps and then approaches and theory, and we've got all these ways of being involved. No matter what level your playing is, you could be a beginner or an advanced, to the nth degree, but it's still the same. It's still the same love, and we're all frustrated. We all want to get better. But it's cool that we can all share it and have this thing together and interact online. And here you are sitting in the south of France, and I'm in McKinney, Texas, and we can have this conversation, and I can have the sincerest passion and energy about it because I know that you have it too. There's a smile on your face, and there's, I love this. So it's good to recognize though that it's a gift. It's not everybody has that kind of art and that passion in their life. So don't take it for granted, just be aware that this is pretty damn cool.
Yeah, this is very important in life, as you said,
Yeah,
especially in
for
our
sure.
weird world.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely. But, and that's, we have to navigate that. We have to pay attention, but also, don't lose the beauty. Don't lose the beauty of life. That would be, all the noise wins then. If you get angry all the time and you're always upset, we have to have a balance, pay attention, do what you can, and be kind to others and embrace this beautiful instrument and art that we have,
That's the most important. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. For this record, I saw that you were invited by Josh Smith, which is your friend. What I saw. You also made one track with him, which is called Johnny T. I love that one. You had other session musicians to mention, like Lamar Carter, I guess.
Yep.
Carlton.
He's the drummer. Yeah. Great drummer.
Lamar.
Great drummer.
And Darren Johnson too, which is on the record.
Great keyboard keyboard player. Yeah.
I wanted to say that it's like the A team of musicians for the record. So how it was to work with these guys? It's these guys are already your friends, I guess. You already played with them.
Well, no. So the whole thing actually came through Josh. Now, Josh, I was just becoming a fan of seeing his. Because I didn't know him at first. I was just seeing his videos on YouTube and such and going, man, I love this guy's playing. So I got his phone number from a mutual friend and just called him to say, hey, man, I love your playing and just wanted to say hi. And we got to be friends just over the phone. And he just mentioned, hey, I just finished my new studio out in L.A. You should come record. I'm like, man, I'd love to do that. And so we found a time to do it. I was coming out to L.A. for the NAMM show in January of 2020. And so we arranged, I'll come out 3 days early. So basically, he was offering for me to come do a record in his studio. And I thought, well, that'll be fun. I mean, I love working with my band. I've got the Andy Timmons band. It's a great bunch of guys. But it's also fun to do projects with other players. And I thought, well, this will be a good opportunity for me to do that. So I told Josh, look, I want you to produce it. You write some songs, I'll write some songs. But you pick the players. I want you to produce it and put the band together that you think would be best for me to play with. And so it was essentially guys that play on his records, Lamar, Travis Carlton, great bass player, and Darren Johnson. And then, so when people first found out that Josh and I were doing a record together, they thought, all right, guitar battle, But it wasn't like that. It was just like, we just wanted to make a record and, he produced but we did play together on the one track that you mentioned, Johnny T. I'd seen him playing a groove on one of his gigs I said, man, write me a tune with that kind of vibe. And that's the Johnny T song. And what Johnny T is a reference to, because he calls that, that the groove of that, it's Johnny Taylor, the great blues singer. So it's a Johnny Taylor groove. So hence the Johnny T title. And yeah, that's his tune that he wrote for me, and he plays a beautiful rhythm guitar, and it's the best. He plays the best solo on the record, so that tells you anything. He just plays beautifully on it. I love
this song is really incredible because it's like when I was hearing it, it's just a discussion between you two. It's a discussion with the guitars. It's incredible to hear that. So
thank you,
I love
man.
that.
Thank you. Well, hopefully we'll get to do it live some. Love to do some more playing with Josh. He's a great guy to work with, good friend, man.
There is a lot of eclectic songs on your album. There is a lot of some ballads like When Words Fail, which is on the album, and you have more punchy sound like this one I really like, which is Apocryphal, which is I loved a lot too.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, how is the musical composition process for you? How does it work? It's you're jamming with for example, Josh, and then the songs came out, or how does it work for you? It's always an intriguing question.
A lot of times, I'll write on my own. Just I first thing I do every day is practice. I like to get a cup of coffee and sit in my office, and a lot of song ideas just kind of come from just kind of playing and letting ideas flow. And that would have been that's how Apocryphal happened. EWF, I'd had that riff for a while though. I gotta play that. That's just kind of a groove, And then, but then I gave that riff to Josh. I got this idea. We kind of wrote it over the phone. He goes, "Oh yeah, well." He came up with the next section, and he came up with that cool riff at the end. And then it's off to the races with the jamming. The ballads, I take time with to kind of just shape it the way that I want to hear it. So it can happen in many ways. It can be driven by an emotion or an event that happens, or sometimes it's just some nice chords or melodies kind of come out. I do write a lot where I'm playing, chords and melodies together. I'm trying to think of the tunes on there, but When Words Fail is... That sounds to me, though, I would have written that as maybe I had a chord progression. And maybe I record a basic rhythm track and then find melodies over it. I guess all this to say is it happens in many different ways. I mean, I have no one specific way of writing, but I never make an exercise out of it, though I could sit with you right now and we could write a song, But I prefer it to be more inspired. I find that when something kind of happens, and I recognize, oh, that's starting to sound like something, then I'll take the time and develop. I have hundreds and thousands of voice memos of little ideas that we all probably have that we try to document in the moment, and sometimes I feel strongly enough to complete them, and sometimes they languish. And sometimes I'll find them a year or two later, go, oh, I need to finish this. So there's always song nuggets and ideas for me to work on. And sometimes it's nice to have a thing like when Josh said, hey, come record, then I've got a deadline. And that's always handy too, to go, oh, okay, I've got to have some songs ready for January when I go out and record. So I might have written a couple things specifically for it, but there was things that I already would have had in the queue, as they say, to work on. But yeah.
Okay.
It happens. All that to say, it happens in many different ways. Yeah.
Okay, I understand.
Nothing specific.
Yeah. Just moving from this composition of music part to guitar technique to conclude. This is the last part of the interview. For beginners or more advanced players who are listening to us. First question, I ask this question every time I talked with a musician, but. Do you have any practice routine on the guitar? Have you something to warm up, or?
I think at certain points in my career I did. I would have put a metronome and. I would be able to go through all the modes of every scale. Just imagine a click track behind me. Whoops, hey, I'm in F major. In this kind of work, it's dangerous in a way, and it's beneficial in a way. And why I say that is, if all we do is practice scales and that type of thing, it's not necessarily musical, right? So up until the point, maybe by the age of 19, when I went to the University of Miami, by the age of 19, I was a very well-formed player, had been playing professionally for many years. But to that point, I had never really, had any kind of practice regimen. I would have gigs and I would have songs to learn. So in that context, I was learning, I was playing, I was just kind of naturally evolving. Now, there could have been a more specific regimen, and I know that some players, have that where, okay, for the next 4 hours, I'm going to 30 minutes of this, 30 minutes of that. And I think that can be beneficial. But like we talked about the transcription, I was never that organized, but I was always musical. The guitar was always in my hands. So even if I wasn't playing exercise, I was, whatever the song was, I was playing. This is not a song, I'm just kind of jam. You know what I'm saying? It was just immersion at all times. But I'm pointing out that when I got to Miami at the age of 19, the guitar theory, and I was being taught all the modes and all that. And so that was beneficial for me to go through that at the time. And I would put on the metronome, and I would work up in the key of F and then back down in the key of B flat and then up in the E flat. Just to really learn every scale and every position. And what that did for me is basically take away all the blind spots. Because I knew if I was playing Cry for You, D minor to B flat, well, I know that's Aeolian because it's that flat 6 kind of sound. I know all those notes of that F major scale are going to work, but I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking, I just see all the notes of the one scale. I don't want to think of it modally. I just want to, if I want to relate it to F major, I can, or I can think all the D minor, different pentatonics and such, but it probably also helped me play more horizontally, which I do quite a bit of, because I can see the neck very horizontally as opposed to just positions vertically. It's all helpful, and we all kind of start off with the kind of the box positions. But it's handy. Because to me, that the guitar sings a bit better horizontally. And you can play, or you could play. You know what I mean? There's a bit more expressive potential, right? So the general advice I would give is that yes, if you're at a point where you need to work on your scales and such, do so, but immediately after a session of maybe working on the scales, then immediately apply it into an improvisational or songwriting session. So if you're gonna let's say you played all the modes of a particular scale, then immediately put on some kind of jam track where you get to utilize these things. But don't sit there and play while the jam track's going on. Just go, oh, I know what notes are possible. Because at the end of the day, I think I hope the goal is that we want to make music. And not many people really enjoy to hear people playing scales, It can be entertaining for a little while if somebody's really blazing through some scales. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's nice to have the ability to rip through certain patterns and preconceived sets of notes. But I like to draw from the knowledge of how I've learned all that, but then just try to find the melodies and try to find the music. Occasionally, it's nice to, whatever those moments might be, it's nice to have that on your palette to paint from. But yeah, I really viewed all that kind of learning as just a way of learning the neck and seeing what's possible, as whereas being able to help my ear know where to take the fingers, have that connection between the ear and the hands.
Okay, so the most important part is perhaps to have to map the fretboard horizontally. You would say
that's worked for me. Yeah, that's where. In addition to what we generally tend to learn is more kind of vertical positions, but I combine all that
to connect.
I've to connect it all to where I don't have any blind spots, and I have multiple ways of playing, even if it might be the same notes. That's the conundrum with the guitar. You can play. There's so many ways of playing and where to play. So then you can make those choices depending on the tone and the timbre that you want to have it sound. When I'm working on specific musical phrases, I might try. Do I want to hear? Or do I want to hear? Or do I want to hear? Each of them extremely different. But that's kind of nice. Get a little more treble out of it. A little meatier there. So a lot of time goes into finding the exact expression for the phrase that I might want.
Okay. For an intermediate players who want to have more velocity on the guitar, what is your main advice you would give us to improve the velocity?
Well, that also can be a very handy thing to work with the metronome. One of the earliest instructional tapes I ever had was from Steve Morse. It wasn't a video; it was just an audio cassette, and he was talking about how when he was working on a section of a song, he would set the metronome at a particular setting and, but just making sure that everything was really, really clean, not, don't try to go too fast, too quickly, being honest, by whatever the scale or the phrase. And once that's clean, and you can do that for all, then start to bump up the BPM of the metronome. And then when you get to a point where it's just a little sloppy, back it down. So there can be very methodic ways like that. I did that a little bit. But most of what I do really did evolve and naturally, very, very organically and naturally. Even a lot of the techniques I wasn't necessarily aware of that it was evolving, but by the nature of playing all the time and the human body naturally kind of making adjustments when you're not even aware of it. It's like these subtle things start to just kind of take care of themselves. And so So when you ask me a question like that, it'd be handy if I had, well, here's XYZ, exactly what to do. But for me, honestly, it was just a matter of a lot of time invested. I just kept doing it. And yeah, make those parts of your practice where you can, really isolate things and make sure you're playing accurately. That's really valuable. And maybe I wish I would have done that more so. But I always have to balance it with having fun and enjoying the playing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have a son that's 18. He's been playing guitar for 2 years now. He's kind of a late bloomer. He started when he was 16. But I hear him every day. He's in there practice. I hear things getting a little better. Ben's getting more in tune, And I show him certain things, but I also know he's doing it because he's loving it, and I don't have to say much. I'll give him little pointers here and there, and I actually have him signed up. He's taking lessons from another teacher, which I think is, good for the father-son relationship. But we do jam together, and I do help him with certain things, but it's fun for me to hear that same process that I would have done. Just he keeps working at it. He does use YouTube a lot. You can always go, and he's learning all the Metallica songs. He loves he loves James Hetfield and Kirk Hammett, right? So he's getting really good at that, and it's fun for me to hear. But it's because he's just working at it every day, and that's the key for all of us. It's such an important thing that I know, depending on people's lives, depending if they're in school or if they're working, it's sometimes hard to find the time. But you can always get up a little earlier or carve out that period of time. And I know from personal experience that there was years in my life where I wasn't a regular practicer. I was always gigging and always playing, but I started getting back into the habit, man. If I made sure that I got up early enough to, the first thing I did every day was just play guitar for at least an hour, I have a much happier day. You know what I mean? Because I felt like, okay, I've honored whatever gift I have. I've gotten to at least, even if it's just improvising over a backing track for an hour. But I've made that connection with the instrument. I'm fortifying what I know, hopefully trying new things or learning little bits of new things. But it's that consistent everyday nurturing that's so important for all of us to really grow and to really get somewhere with the instrument.
It's a perfect conclusion for the interview.
Okay.
So
Thanks
thanks a lot again, Andy, for your time and all this passion. Just to conclude, what are the different ways to follow you? So first, let's talk about Electric Truth, which will be released on April 1st. That's it. On
April
all the
1st.
platforms and.
It'll be out digitally everywhere, and we're doing pre-sales on the andytimmons.com site, so people can find it there. If they want the physical copy, they can order it from me. But all the usual stuff, you can find me on YouTube pretty easily, Andy Timmons Official, and Instagram, and just by typing my name in, I'm assuming you can find me most places. And then I have a guitar instructional site called guitarexperience.net, no E before the X, guitarexperience.net, where every month I add a new song that I do a playthrough on camera, then I teach about 90 minutes of note for note how to play it. And then I have a great transcriptionist in Brazil named Alexander Calamari that transcribes it in tab and regular notation in a guitar profile. Okay. And so all that's available at guitarexperience.net. And of course, all the Instagrams and Facebooks, and I'm not on TikTok, but maybe someday we'll see. I'm just trying to learn how to play this thing,
Okay, fine. So I will put all the links in the description, of course.
Great.
So wish you a happy release for this album. I think a lot of people and only your fans will love that because
thanks, man. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate. I hope so.
I'm sure about that.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks again, Andy. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
You too, man. Thanks, Alex.
See you, Andy. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye.